Now the lecture of today is the final lecture, and there is not really new content, but it's just an explanation of the final project, final assignment, where you do a small project, and we still have a week of 5 weeks, a period of 5 weeks about that for it. So there's still some time to work on that. So what I will do is just give some description of it, and then I indicate some topics, for example, topics that are still can be found in the books that were not in lectures yet, but also topics chosen in previous years and some further list of topics from which you can choose, but your own topic is always possible, so that's never an issue. But if you need some inspiration, this can help. So the final assignment, you should have a report finally that has a number of things. You describe the chosen domain and the processes that you want to study, the background domain knowledge about that. For example, from sciences like this, depending on the topic. And then you will be asked to do a graphical representation like the network picture that we know how to do with the different levels if there is adaptation in it. And also fully specified role matrices, all these things that you are a bit accustomed to. And then simulations of some example scenarios to illustrate how the model works. And also a choice in verification or analysis. You can make a choice here. You can do the mathematical type of analysis like in assignment 9, but you can also choose for social network analysis like in assignment 7, I think. Yeah. So depending on whether it's a social network and you prefer that, but you can also do the other one for the non-social networks. Also for the social networks, you can still choose them. And finally, also something with validation, so that you can try to justify why the model is a good model compared to what is known from the domain, but also that you show how the pattern that comes out of the simulation can be made matching a bit okay with what is expected from the domain. So these are the different parts that are expected in your report, and yeah, you will already be familiar with them. They almost are the same things that you already have found in the smaller assignments. So that's that. Then the topics. You can choose any topic as that concerns human or social behavior or some combination of that. It can have perspectives from different sides. It can have perspectives from social science, from psychology, cognitive science, or neuroscience, or biology more in general. So these are different ways to pick up your perspective, your way of working. In book 1, there are a number of things that were not addressed in the lectures. And there are 2 chapters on dreaming. First, how you can model dreaming as a form of internal simulation. And the second chapter shows how dreaming helps you to relax, to get your stress away. So if you don't dream well, then your stress will stay. And then you will have stressful life after the night. Another topic we didn't discuss in lectures is chapter 6 about how emotions can be used as a basis for decision making and how the resulting decisions can afterwards also be considered as rational. There is a topic that goes more on, say, the social neuroscience side, that persons can assign ownership to an action, that you feel responsible for it, or you can attribute an action to somebody else, or you can make mistakes in that, like, for example, persons with schizophrenia do. And you can also have the empathic interaction between persons. I've discussed it a little bit in chapter 7, I think. You can do more about it, and also how you can do joint decision making, that you come to a joint decision with some person or persons, but also that it's empathic in the sense that you really understand each other and you also get both a good feeling about it. So that's a kind of high norm for a decision making, a joint decision making, not only that you go the same way, but also that you have a really mutual understanding of each other. So that's chapter 10 of that book. So you could relate to such topics and be aware that even if a topic has been addressed and there is some model for it, there is almost always, there are many possibilities to do it better or to do it different or to add aspects that were not addressed yet. In book 2, there is also one chapter with some application that was not addressed. That's the strange loops chapter, or chapter 8. And there we have the idea that if you have multiple levels of self-models, then you could make the level structure turn around, that it comes back to the base level, and that the base level is actually also the highest level of the whole hierarchy of levels. And that's what you call a strange loop. That's a notion from Douglas Hofstadter. So that's also possible. That's not an easy subject, but last year there was a group that successfully did something for that, and they applied it to political developments. So that's still also an option to get inspiration from. So then I want to briefly show some examples that are from the previous 2 years. And in the document that you can find on ResearchGate, there are still more years back. For now, I do only the last 2 years. So one group studied how spicy food works on pain and pleasure experiences and how there is adaptation to it. Another group looked at how prisoners come from prison after they were there and how that can differ between different types of prisons. Like in the United States, there is a lot of recidivism, but in Norway, much less. So then they compared that. This is one group that studied the role of regular use of cannabis and how that relates to anxiety and sleep. Some group were looking at in the social network, in the social media area, how long certain things are discussed on social media and how they extinguish after some time. And that's also an adaptive process that they've investigated. This is a group that did decision-making where the cognitive and affective elements were both integrated. There was a group that was studying burnout and dreaming. By the way, these are numbers here. I checked to see how much, how often they were people have read them. So this is from ResearchGate. So these are relatively new papers that are only recently available, in fact. So therefore the numbers are like this, and this is quite a high number actually for that short period of time. But if you look further for the next page, then we will have 2018, then there's a longer period and the numbers will be higher. But also still from 2019, last year, of course. So this is the group that did the strange loops. There is one person that did the bystander effect. That was not an adaptive model. Most models were adaptive. And this was investigating in a classroom the development of friendship relations and the relation to alcohol use or smoking or delinquency, this type of properties. So they had that. There was also a group that addressed fear avoidance for when you come into a kind of cycle where you are afraid for something and that cycle confirms itself all the time, and how you can do therapies to break that cycle. This one is a study on emotion regulation strategies, multiple simultaneously. So these were the ones from last year. And the next page will do the ones from 2018. So here, this is the top number of reading. More than 1,000 people were reading this paper, They were investigating a social media situation where the popularity of veganism was, they studied that, and they were considering one big influencer on that network. Then they simulated the whole network with the influencer so that it was fitting well to the increase in popularity of veganism. But then they left out the influencer and checked what happened then, and then there was not even any increase of the interest. So that's what they did. And apparently this topic has a bit of popularity to read about it. By the way, this popularity is not a main criterion, of course. You should really choose something that's really interesting and that many people want to read it. Is not an indication that it is very strong or good research. It's just another aspect of the research, let me say it like that. So in this case, the segregation was studied in the queer community, also through homophilia in networks and social contagion in networks, like we did in assignment 6. This one studied burnout and also how sleep has an effect, or how it affects sleep, how the relation with sleep is. Then this one was about sympathy between countries and how that can have some adaptivity. Then finally in that year, this was also a paper on emotion regulation strategies. This is about bullying, Ritalin, and how Ritalin and test anxiety influence each other. There is one about caffeine and the effect on stress, or maybe also the other way around. And also mindfulness therapy, like the effect of yoga on stress. So these are a number of options that you can get inspiration from. And you can think, yeah, but that option was already done. Yeah, but you can often see new things or different things or and details that they just did not address. So if you really like a topic, you can still choose it. So there are also some further list of topics mentioned in the description of the assignment. Some have some overlap with already you may have seen. Let me see. Classroom, we already had it like this, fear and fear extinction learning, post-traumatic stress, for example. By the relation to emotion, poor emotion regulation and disorders. There are many disorders that have poor emotion regulation as an important cause of it. Desire regulation, that you're tempted and you don't want to do things, but you're still attempting to do it, and how can you regulate that? Habits, how they form and how they can be changed. Emotions, rationality, and those types of things may be related also to the decision making. Ownership, that's already, we've seen that. Yes, opinion dynamics in social media, that you monitor and analyze that. News messages, contagion of lifestyle or exercise behavior or habits. So just these types of things are empathic interaction, you already had that. Joint decision making, you already had that. Well, support, analysis of support for healthy behavior, for example. Highly sensitive persons, that's also in one of the chapters of book 1 actually, that some persons have the criterion of being highly sensitive, and that has positive and negative sides. And Elaine Aron has published nice things about it. So you can also try to model it, or have two persons even in a relationship with one of them or both are highly sensitive. Segregation, this one is more biological, the microbiome and the role in mental health. So that's one thing. The gut-brain axis, it's sometimes called. This one is an option. This one is a bit related that we already have seen, emotion regulation. This is another thing, internal mental models. In many tasks, you use some mental model of your environment or of another person even, or of a device that you have to operate on. And if you have the right mental model, you can do it better. If your mental model is not okay, then you have a problem, and you always are learning or adapting it. So then you have the mental models as a base network, and then the learning and adaptation on one level higher. And the control of that still at the second level, for example. This is plants are intelligent, and this is why. This is also a biological option, where you can see how the behavior of plants has kind of intelligence in it. Chapter 9 of, no, chapter 8, I should say, of the 2020 book showed one example of a case study in evolution with the 5 levels. Maybe you remember that. There are more cases described in literature by biological science people, and you could also check analyze such a case study, another one. You can consider mind reading and theory of mind. That is a bit related to empathy maybe, but they're in the literature often considered as a bit different as well. So that how you can know about somebody else, how you can reason about somebody else. And maybe also in this time you can do something about virus propagation and human behavior and the role in that. So I think these are already many options. That's almost the last part that I have. So again, this is only meant as ideas, that you get an idea of what things are possible, and you can choose one of them, and then we discuss how you can make it a bit unique, a bit new, say. But you can just also think about your own interests and see what you can do with that. So just propose what you prefer. So the last slide is a text that I had to write recently. There was a book. Springer Nature has just started a book series called Integrated Science, or Science Without Borders. They want to promote more the multidisciplinary ways of doing science. And of course, what we do in this course is exactly that. So I was happy that they asked me also to write a chapter for that book. But then after a while, it turned out that the editor of this book, this one, he wanted to have a final chapter of the whole book where everybody was contributing a part. Every author of a chapter of the book had to contribute a part where you should show what you think about the year 2050, 30 years from now. I'm usually not a fan of that, because I find that often a bit arrogant to tell that you know what will happen in 30 years' time. But this time I felt a bit forced to do it, so therefore I wrote this text as a kind of story. So therefore you should consider that this as a story, not as the real world, but at least it gives some idea how you can come to an idea that you are a robot from different sides, either human or not human. But so maybe you can have a reading of that if you like it. But that's all what I want to say. But maybe you have more questions now.